Today I will be speaking on the downsides of choosing a career as an MMA athlete. I will discuss with you the positives as well and try to bring information to your attention about MMA that you may not have already known. This topic was the first choice that came to my mind when deciding what I wanted to write on, and that's because MMA is important to me and brings value to my life and many others around the world. Now, what is MMA? Well, as of today, MMA athletes are becoming household names more than ever before. Let us be honest, everybody and their mama knows who Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey are. This kind of superstardom would seem like a reach in a sport like MMA in the 90s. MMA was looked at as brutal cage fighting with no purpose but to promote violence and much less of a sport at the time. But now, we live in a time where MMA has more fans than ever before and are even making the step to becoming included in the Olympics. Now, I would be remiss if I were just to mention all the negatives of being an MMA fighter, so let me touch on the positives for a second. First off, you do not have to start training with the goal of being a fighter. You could be there to seek self-discipline or just there to stay in shape. My favorite positive of the sport is that it helps loads of kids who are victims to being bullied go from being prey to having extreme mental and physical breakthroughs. Fun fact, a lot of the biggest stars in the UFC are bullied as a kid, and martial arts are what changed their day-to-day life. It's so bad, we do not even have to look at the bottom of the barrel. Let's go straight to the UFC, the biggest and most well-known MMA promotion in the world. The average annual income for UFC fighters in 2020 was $147,965. This is extremely small in the world of sports. So let's look at some other fields for comparison. How about baseball? 4.43 million. Basketball? 7.7 million. Even NFL players do more than quadruple this mediocrity with $860,000. Now, the reason I chose this route is because I wanted to address what's, in my opinion, the most negative part of this whole ordeal, which is CTE. CTE, also known as chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is a progressive and fatal brain disease associated with traumatic brain injuries, including concussions and repeated blows to the head. The NFL is notorious for having a big discussion about brain damage and going forward to change the game to protect their athletes. But what can you do to protect fighters from this? You cannot change the rules to exclude strikes to the head because that just wouldn't make sense. In the fight world, there are fears of being brain dead after a career in MMA. Now, it is not impossible to avoid this. Dominick Cruz, a current fighter on the UFC roster, developed his style of fighting all around not getting hit. He has managed to utilize his unorthodox footwork and head movement to try to get hit as least as possible, and he has managed to do a lot of success with this strategy, even going as far to obtain a UFC title and sit atop the 135-pound division for a multi-year reign as champion. Now, I know I sound like I'm hating on MMA fighters, but trust me, I'm not. MMA is my favorite sport in the world, and I'm tuned in to UFC every Saturday night. I love the joy I see on fighters' faces after they get a win that they trained 6 months for. Also, that moment when a fighter is behind on the scorecards and they must come out in that final round and dig deep to give it everything they got to get a comeback victory in the last remaining seconds of the bout. As a spectator, there is one factor that is highly responsible for CTE, and that's taking unnecessary shots. These shots are after your opponent is already done for, and they can be deadly. I mean, literally, most of these shots are after an opponent is completely unconscious. It is the responsibility of the referee to stop the fight before these punches can land, but sometimes they do not notice a fighter is knocked out, or in some instances, they just can't get there in time. Now, what we just looked at here is a referee who was the former. He couldn't get there in time. He noticed exactly what happened. As soon as the knee landed, you can see him rushing immediately. I mean, just watch it right here. Boom, he runs forward, you know? But those two punches right there, that's a big dude. That he hits pretty hard, and those two punches did a lot of damage. His brain is just rattling around in his skull, and it was unnecessary, you know? As a martial artist, he didn't have to throw those punches. It's a respect thing at the end of the day, but these two guys didn't like each other, and he got some hits in. But anyways, this was the end of that man's career. He fought one more time after this and then retired. But those shots to the head didn't help his career at all. His shelf life was completely diminished after that, and that's what these fighters are trying to avoid. Mario Yamasaki is a former referee who is notorious for letting fighters take unnecessary damage. These are not just claims, there is video evidence to support this. And UFC President Dana White has stated adamantly that Yamasaki is not welcome to referee another UFC fight. This is obviously because the UFC care about their fighters' health, and brain damage does nothing but shorten the shelf life of a UFC fighter's career. Now, as you can see here, this whole time I'm talking, this fight should have been stopped. This fighter's not defending himself. He's taking a lot of unnecessary, heavy shots. These are big guys. These are heavyweights. And he hasn't done anything but lay there on his back and get pummeled. This fight is over. The referee is there to protect him from his opponent and himself. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Dana White was not happy about this. And you're about to hear
the reality
yourself.
is when you're a fighter and you're in there, and it's one of the reasons that this sport is as big as it is, because most of you guys don't tap. Most of you guys stay in there, and she did fight like a warrior. For that idiot to say that he gave her the opportunity to be a warrior, no, you moron. You're in there to protect her from herself. He makes me sick. That guy has no business reffing fights, and I promise you, you're not going to see him again.
You see, so that's the attitude you get from the UFC president, who is in charge of the whole company, and he's not happy about this because, like I said, you're just diminishing the shelf life of a fighter by letting them take that kind of unnecessary damage. In conclusion, all I'm saying is there is a very high chance that this career choice can have an impact on your brain in the long run. And if you take that and weigh it alongside the fact of fighter pay being extremely low, is it worth it? Yes, you can raise your stock as a fighter by becoming more popular, which will in turn make you more money. But not everyone is a Conor McGregor, not everyone has that it factor, and all it really takes is one punch.